We will begin the Lake Como workshop meeting. And just forgive me, I'm just getting up my agenda here. So this is the workshop meeting to discuss, once I look at it officially. We have one discussion item under our workshop meeting tonight. It is discussion regarding an ordinance addressing storm water runoff. I've invited two guests tonight, the chairperson of our planning board and our planning board attorney, the chairperson, Mr. Joe Cavaluzzi, and our planning board, not attorney, I'm sorry, our planning board engineer, Alan P. Hillett Jr., to kind of talk to the council tonight about this topic. This is a topic that has come up at our council meetings very recently, but it's also been a topic that has been discussed at the planning board level for some time now. We did a reevaluation of the master plan for Lake Como, and this was a suggestion of the planning board to have this further discussion as well, among other things. As the council knows, we did discuss Florida area ratio, which was part of that re-examination, and some other items. And this is one of those topics. So I'm going to really just outline very briefly and very in the raw the topic, and then I will hand it off to our guests tonight. This item has been discussed on the planning board almost every situation that comes before us, and that is, how are we dealing with, or how can we deal with, work with stormwater runoff off of private properties. As we are building homes in this town, more homes in this town, larger homes in this town, how can we move forward to work with our citizens and protect them from additional stormwater runoff and the addition of impervious surfaces. So I know that Alan, you have been conversing with Drew over the past couple of weeks on this topic, and I would turn it over to you, to the two of you, to kind of express to the council what the planning board is thinking about when it comes to stormwater runoff. I would just caution that for some of us up here, this may be a new topic, so in some of the language that you use, I request that you be kind. So I don't know if one of you would like to begin.
I'll just say I'm very happy the council has taken this up. It's a real problem. It's a problem not just in our town, but in towns all over the place. And it has a lot of potential to affect our quality of life, you know, with the flooding and all. I'm going to defer to Al to speak. He's our expert. And I know he's conferred with Drew on this, and Drew's thoughts on the ordinance. So.
Great, thank you. So I'm glad you guys are finally getting here. I've been with the board since 2010, and I've been hoping for an ordinance like this since then. This is actually the only town I work in that doesn't have an ordinance like this. So, you know, bravo that we're now here. So the purpose of this ordinance, although it's kind of, let's say, maybe seemingly being prompted by, like, let's say the planning board, and it was suggested by the planning board through 2 re-examination reports, it really is intended to create a framework for development in town, whether it comes before the board or not. Like right now, the only time we really get to do anything with regard to stormwater is if it comes before the board, and as part of the criteria for the granting of a variance or variances, you know, maybe doing some drainage work would be a mitigating factor. And applicants, either the board impresses upon the applicant, or the applicant may actually offer to do, let's say, some stormwater mitigation through their project. The idea behind the ordinance, though, is really for it to apply to development that really just goes for a zoning permit, that you capture more than just what comes to the board. I mean, we see what, like probably 20 applications a year or something like that, but how many building applications happen here in a year? So, and you know, but so, when they come before the board, we probably have a little more latitude to kind of enforce, like say, more dramatic measures, you know, folks that live nearby, if, you know, this property, property under consideration was creating a problem, neighbors are able to come to the meeting, make the board aware of certain circumstances, and the board can say, do something about that, but you have less leeway when you have it like as part of the ordinance. Typically, at least where I've seen it, is by ordinance, when they come for just a zoning permit, you're essentially seeking to mitigate what they're proposing, like existing is existing, and that kind of remains the same, but let's say they want to do a 20 by 20 porch. Okay, they're gonna mitigate what happens with the runoff that comes from their addition, not from the whole house. So, and that's really like the first bite at the apple here, is really to get something on the books that, you know, and we're gonna talk in detail in the draft. Drew, they all have copies of this? So, you know, so I get, you know, a couple months ago, Drew asked me if there was, you know, a couple of ordinances that, you know, I was familiar with, and, you know, I pointed him toward the Brielle one, which is kind of simplistic, and then Spring Lake as well. And actually, what you have in front of you is probably more Spring Lake than it is, and I happen to be the board engineer in both of those towns. That's one of the reasons I suggested them. But there's some suggestions here that, you know, you can see that it's already kind of color-coded here. There's even some more suggestions that Joe and I spoke through yesterday. I feel like every time I look at this, I try to run through scenarios and see how, like, either the ordinance gets tripped up or applicants can get tripped up. Because really what you want to do is effectuate stormwater mitigation so that neighbors don't get inundated with stormwater from a development. But you don't want to create a framework such that somebody might actually be doing this, like, let's say a conforming addition, but they can't conform to all the things in the stormwater ordinance, and they have to come before the planning board to get relief from the stormwater ordinance. You know, like, it feels like that's almost like the tail wagging the dog. So, that's some of the things I want to talk through tonight. I mean, this is really a very good start, and frankly, I could probably live with it as, you know, it was drafted, but I feel like there's some things, like some mitigating factors in Lake Como that are different than, let's say, what is encountered in Spring Lake. And Spring Lake typically has larger lots. They have wider side yards. They have, you know, less, actually, lot coverage. So, you know, maybe that's where we need to kind of think through some of these things, and so if we want to go through maybe item by item here in the ordinance.
Can I just stop you there? And I'm just gonna ask the council if they have any questions at this point. We all understand what we're talking about when we talk about stormwater runoff from private properties? Okay. Thank you.
So if we start at item A of the handout, the existing elevation shall not be altered by more than 18 inches through soil removal, filling, what have you. Actually, my initial question on that was, you know, like, who's actually approving that? But then after speaking with, you know, whether it's the zoning officer, the borough engineer, the planning board engineer, like, all of these different things kind of, you don't want to make, like Drew had said, you want to kind of do this once and do it right and make it clear and implementable. But after speaking with Joe yesterday about this, the 18 inches is actually what's really bothering me, because, you know, and I think it was bothering Joe yesterday, that, you know, in some instances, our zoning ordinance in the residential zones allows for structures to be 3 feet from the side lot line. If you're able to change a grade by 18 inches in that 3-foot side yard, I mean, I think that's just begging for trouble. And see, the problem is when you have an ordinance, or an ordinance, let's say, has an allowance such as this, applicants will find a way to do it at 17.5 inches, so the ordinance doesn't apply, or you know what I mean, like, they'll find a way around this, and, you know, unfortunately, sometimes that's not very neighborly. And we're really, I mean, at the end of the day, this ordinance, or any of these stormwater ordinances in many cases, are forcing people to be good neighbors. That's really what it kind of boils down to. It used to be, the water's going away from my house, that's all that matters. Except they weren't thinking about what happens to the neighbor next door or 2 doors down. And this hopefully will at least raise that awareness formally. So after Joe and I kind of worked through this and read through, let's say, the rest of the ordinance, I think I'm almost of a mind to delete item A altogether. Because item C actually captures more of what I think item A is. It's more implementable. So I think, like, almost like C becomes A, and you get rid of A altogether.
Well, it looks like C and A are the same thing, except A has a measurement, and C does not.
Yes, and that's, I'm afraid of the measurement, because people are gonna do 17 inches, 17.5 inches, and, you know, and they're gonna say, well, I'm allowed to do that.
What, I'm concerned, I wanna know, what are the criteria to be approved? Because you have to have, don't you have to have some, it just says here, no alteration of the existing elevation of the land or approved grading plan shall be permitted without the approval of the engineer, planning board engineer, in the case of a grading plan. But what criteria are you gonna apply? Because from a due process standpoint, doesn't there have to be some standards in the ordinance?
Well, so, yes, and I guess they're kind of built in there. To my mind, they're built in there, probably not to yours. So what a grading plan, like a grading and drainage plan looks like is, it's a survey of the property that has the 4 square of the property, maybe some, you know, if there's a garage next door that's close by, that'll be on the survey. And then there's topography that comes with that. So you get like, so you have the meets and bounds of the property and the topography. And the idea is if somebody's gonna plop a house on that lot, they can't alter the grade in any substantial way without it being approved. So now you're gonna rely on somebody, we're not gonna define who that is yet, that's going to review that, understand how that works, and make sure that in the post-condition, that there's no change in grade based on that grading plan. So, or at least it allows the reviewer a bit of latitude to make sure that the neighbors are safeguarded by what's proposed. So that's really kind of the criteria. So it's not like an A, B, and C checklist. It's kind of built into like good engineering practice that, I mean, we look at these things all the time.
And now currently there is no requirement for a grading plan,
None
correctly?
whatsoever.
Okay. So this ordinance would require a grading plan.
It would require grading.
Even for
Which-
matters that didn't come before the planning board?
Well, we'll get to a threshold here in a minute.
Okay.
But yes, a grading and drainage plan, if required, would be to that level. And actually, that might be something that we even have to enumerate in this ordinance, that it needs to be, you know, like, let's say, done by a licensed, you know, it needs to be based on a survey by a licensed land surveyor, and that the grading plan has to be done by a licensed land surveyor or a landscape architect or a licensed engineer. So, but recognize, because people may look at you funny on this one, is that, you know, what you just described, you know, could be $1,500 or $200,000 that those applicants are gonna have to spend in order to achieve that requirement, just that one paragraph. You know, but that's, you know, it's just something to be aware of, that, you know, they're going to incur a cost. And maybe even through the review, I mean, if there's a grading plan to be reviewed, who's reviewing it? If it's like somebody on staff, like if you're a zoning officer, that's one thing, but, you know, if the municipal engineer has to get involved, there could be a cost involved there, like it kind of snowballs a little bit. So, don't know if I answered your question or not.
If I could just throw something out, would you be more comfortable if there was, could that criteria be a verbal criteria? So in other words, a grading plan that demonstrates and is approved by the town engineer, whoever approves it, but the stormwater runoff will not run off the property onto the neighbor's property.
Or increase that, well, I think so.
I mean, that's what we're saying here.
That's the
Without
objective,
stating it
right?
directly.
But my, I do have a question, so if somebody does not need to come before the planning board, they're just doing the 20-foot porch, let's say, are we gonna require them to do the grading plan?
Well, we'll get down to that, I might even
Okay.
like C or D.
Okay.
Cause they're usually, like, most ordinances are written around, it's actually in D1. Like, I'm sorry, in D, that there's like a threshold that gets tripped. If it's an existing home, they're only putting a second floor on, the footprint's not expanding, that's no grading plan. But if they're going to do X number of square feet, what should that be? In Spring Lake, it's 750. In Brielle, it's 500. Here, I was probably more of a mind like 400, or even. I think
750 is like
Joe
half
was
the
right.
property.
Even 250.
Right,
I mean, what we're seeing, the trend we're seeing is that even though our lots are nothing like the lots in Spring Lake, people are looking at them as though they are. People are trying to build, basically build compounds on their property with additional, more than one, I'm talking about a garage or a 10-by-10 storage shed. Structures that have other functions that require utilities to go to them, for instance, and we'll address that a little later on too, but.
so, I mean, so, you have, zones in town that are, or have like 4,000 square foot lots. And they're allowed 40% building coverage on that lot. So that is a 1,600 square foot footprint that would be allowed on that 4,000 square foot lot. 400 square feet would be a quarter of the allowable. Is that enough? Is it too much? Is it not enough? That's something I think that we don't need to determine tonight, but, by the same token, think of it this way. If somebody wanted to put in a one-car garage, that's probably on the order of 250 square feet. Do you think they should have a dry well on a 40 by 100 foot lot? Maybe they should. That was what Joe and I were kind of kicking around yesterday. To thinking kind of like layman's terms, forget about the area. Think about what the structure would be. I mean, a 10 by 10 shed, maybe not, but a garage, maybe. I mean, that would be fair game. It's a big improvement. It ends up, a lot of times, I worry sometimes more about the rear yards than I do about the front yards. A lot of times you have the ability to discharge stormwater kind of to the front, and if it gets out to the street, that's always kind of like the fair game, is at least if it gets to the street, it's not affecting the neighbors. It might assist in inundating the borough's drainage system, but at least it's not impacting the adjacent neighbors. But if it's all the way in the back, what is it doing to the four corners around there? It could be trapped back there. Think of the different streets and, what people's backyards look like on those different streets. Or conversely, like down, you have like road, there are streets like Parkway that have a slope where it goes from side yard to side yard to side yard to side yard. I mean, that's something that you need to kind of envision when you make these decisions. So, I'm probably more of a mind, like Joe was saying, like it's probably even less than 400 square feet might be the magic number.
Yeah.
But again, weighed by the fact that somebody wants to put that garage in, they're gonna spend $2,000 doing that, just doing paperwork to get their permit, in addition to architectural plans and all the other stuff. So, I don't know if I answered your question. But I like Joe's idea
Good
that
question.
having some criteria, like a general criteria, is probably a good thing, because it kind of sets the tone for what a grading plan should look like.
And, in our town, if you have the standard lot, most of the lots are 40 by 100, you're allowed to put your garage, rear yard setback's only 3 feet. So, you know, you're right on somebody, you're right close to somebody else's property. You know, it's something to consider. You know, one of the other board members, who wanted to be here tonight, Chip Kavanaugh, but he's had to go to a fire meeting in relation to fire yesterday. He had asked me to mention something that, you know, he said he wanted the number down lower too. And, his concern was, you know, if you have some of the older houses in town that don't use leaders and gutters, you know, they have no drainage, no stormwater plan at all on the property, on the existing property, that if you give them, if you're gonna give them a variance for an addition, whether it's, you know, even if it's only 250 feet, it doesn't really, if they have a mechanism on the property to handle the stormwater, 250 feet is not gonna really matter very much. But if they don't have leaders and gutters, now you have a house that doesn't have any mechanism for it, and you're gonna just give it to, you're just gonna have this addition. Say they're putting a one-car garage attached to the side of the house, so they can do that. You're gonna require them to meet the plan on that, but not the rest of the house. It's not, you know, maybe there's a way, and Al and I discussed this, and he's got some thoughts on it that I hadn't thought of, but maybe there's a way at that point you make them put a drainage plan onto the whole property, even though it's existing. Just to say, well, you just have to put a drainage plan on for this one new section, while the other water's going all over the place, is, you know, you're not really solving it very much.
It's hard to do that though on a property that like comes for a zoning permit, it's a completely conforming addition, for them to retrofit the entire structure. And most of the implementation of that, like certainly if it comes before the board, it's fair game. If stormwater is an issue, I think the board can get around to where there's a condition that stormwater on site shall be mitigated in some manner as part of their approval. And it's, you know, part of the criteria by which they let's say, received approval. But, you know, we're trying to capture this also, like, I don't think, I don't know what kind of jurisdiction, like legally, you can kind of go back to retrofit something, an existing condition, even if it's bad, with the ordinance. You know, does it become subjective? You know, how do we implement this? How do you, I don't know, the only things I have experience with are where you have to mitigate the stormwater from the proposed arrangement, at least in a zoning permit stand. You know, if it's gonna happen administratively through the zoning office, then the mitigation only really happens to the extent of the new construction. And when I say new construction, new lateral construction. If it's just a straight up second story addition, that does, because really the drainage patterns don't change if you're just going straight up. It's when you're adding more impervious, that's.
But that goes to, I think, Joe's comment that if there's nothing existing and you go up to a second story, then you would have to include additional
Okay.
water
I
mitigation.
never really thought of it that way, maybe. I don't know, that might be a legal discussion on whether you can do that or not. But, I don't think that's been the implementation in any of the towns where I've worked, that, you know, it's really more of a lateral addition. And actually, it goes by area of disturbance, so, you know, it's kind of measured on the ground, it's not measured like on the structure. So you could have two, you know, a front porch and a back deck with a cover over it, and in aggregate, that could be, you know, the threshold number, but you're still only really addressing the additions.
We'll take a pause right there if anybody has any questions or anything they want to add to the discussion.
I have a question. In Part C, if the plan requires approval of the borough engineer or the planning board engineer, is there some criteria that the engineer would follow? That, in other words, Part C could say, as provided in whatever source, would state the criteria the engineer would
No,
use?
so that was a combination of kind of the preamble that Joe suggested, that, you know, and it's, you know, kind of a qualitative thing, like, you know, a grading plan to demonstrate that, you know, stormwater will not impact adjacent properties. So that kind of sets the framework, and then it's the engineer's, let's say, good engineering judgment on whether a plan either achieves that or doesn't achieve that. Yeah, there's not like a set rule.
There's not a book. that
No, there's
says
not a
this
book.
is- This is the grading
Definitely not a
plan
book.
for the state. anything like
But
that.
actually, so when we get down a little bit later, there's actually some design criteria built into this. But, that's more for like the mitigation, you know, encouraging recharge. Okay, that's a bit of math, but the grading is really more of a subjective thing. So now we get to item B. This actually, goes a bit to that criteria that we were just talking about, the significant alteration of the topographic features, you know, shall be prohibited, particularly where there's trees and shrubs are removed or existing stabilized slopes. So I think that is, you know, kind of goes to that criteria, because the more grading you do, the more trees you have to take down, the more, you know, when you either adding, cutting or filling of a lot has effect on the vegetation that lives there.
What does it mean when it says significant alteration?
Well, so I would say, to the extent, like, if I had to apply it to like a single-family lot, it would be to the extent that the addition has to go in. It can't be that, you know, you're gonna be changing grade 25 feet away from the addition that they put in. You know, to me, that would be significant, that they're going well beyond, let's say, the footprint of what the project is.
I'm not sure how, if I was the person doing a project, I would know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not.
Well, so, I mean, a homeowner himself is not really, they're not, I mean, unless they're a licensed.
Or they're professionals,
A
you know,
professional, but they're professional,
will understand
Yes.
the content, significant alteration.
yes.
I mean, in this ordinance, it says significant alteration, penetration of existing slope in excess of 2 feet in height, and again, that's, you know, we were talking about that.
Well,
where we
actually, I
have that.
wanted to strike that last sentence,
Yeah.
because that's actually a specific thing in Spring Lake, and I don't know if it necessarily really applies here. Again, some bluffs and what have you, like along Ocean Avenue, that they don't want penetrated, so that's really kind of specific to Spring Lake. So, definitely the utilization of retaining walls, or prohibition on that that's a good thing, because that helps reduce the significant, you know, it kind of goes to the significant part. If you allow retaining walls, you allow significant grading of the lot, whereas if you're relying on natural features, you are more constrained. So, like, I like B, and probably B to remain where B is. And then, like I said, I really think that item C becomes like the new A. You get rid of the A that's there, and you make C, because that establishes the framework. And you can go a little bit further. That's probably where you would insert that, you know, qualitative description that Joe suggested earlier. And then D, you kind of get into the more of the nuts and bolts of, you know, what the footprint can be, what the, you know, where you can or can't discharge stormwater, and sump pump discharges. So, I mean, those are really, like, that's probably set up properly, your, I think the area of disturbance is really the thing that probably needs to be tightened up on that, in that, paragraph D.
So this is basically telling the homeowner what they have to do to mitigate their
Right.
their stormwater.
So, and
Where it has to
really
go
two-
and what the function has to be.
Yes, and that's the straight mitigation, because you're really, here you're trying to reduce recharge. That's where you're disposing of stormwater on site, as opposed to the grading plan, which you're trying to mitigate water going from property to property. This is where you're trying to actually dispose of it on site. So, and usually they kind of work hand in hand.
Excuse me for 1 second, this is where you were saying you would wanna reduce that 750?
Yeah, like I'm thinking the
That
range.
seems pretty
now-
significant for our town.
Well, it's way too high.
Yeah.
300 would be 15 by 20, like
Yeah.
300 square feet, that's a garage.
Right.
You know, 20 by 400 is 20 by 20, that's a pretty decent sized addition, you
Right.
know?
Right.
When you figure a driveway on a property and 3-foot setbacks, you're not gonna build a house that's too much wider than 20 feet, so that's, you know, it could be a substantial addition to the house. I don't know what 750 square feet breaks down to, but that's a very big addition for a 40-foot block, you know?
Right, for our town.
Yeah, that'd be like a 25 by 30, that's, you know, probably like a 2.5 car garage, it's,
Right.
you know, that's pretty big. You know, so that's something to kind of, like, 'cause I'm thinking the range is between 250 and 400, you know, after all of these different iterations and discussions. The dry well sizing, like at 75 cubic feet in item is like D1. 75 square, or cubic feet of storage is probably way too high, it's kind of commensurate with the 750 square feet. You know, I'm thinking that maybe that's more on the order of 40
40,
cubic
yeah.
feet. Because again, that, even though, you know, you might end up doing an addition that's smaller, like let's say if you go with 250 and they only need 25 cubic feet, you could still have them put in a 40 cubic foot, like dry well or recharge system. That added capacity is helpful. We're only talking about an inch of rain for the criteria. If you look further down in that D1, you're providing a cubic foot of storage for every 12 square feet of roof area. That's the equivalent of an inch of rain. So recognizing that it's gonna recharge as it's raining, so it's not just that you have that many cubic feet of storage, it's kind of a continual process, but, you know, there's gonna be rainstorms when it gets inundated. When you get 3 inches in an hour, you know, those dry wells will even get inundated. But, you know, if they're gonna catch 85% of the rainstorms, 90% of the rainstorms, something like that, I mean, those numbers have been pretty, I think, you know, I wanna say they've kind of stood the test of time, the inch over 12 square feet.
So if this was accepted by the council and it was passed as an ordinance, what are some of the things that would be excluded? What are the mitigating factors or the management tools that exist now that would not be allowed with this ordinance?
I don't know if anything would not be allowed. They would just, like, the applicants would have to achieve the performance required of this ordinance. It's not precluding them from doing a garage, it's just.
No, I'm talking about the how people are dealing with their runoff currently. So, for instance, you know, I have a neighbor who has their leaders into a pipe that goes underground that goes out into the street,
Right,
right? Is that something that would not be allowed,
that would not be allowed.
right? So you would not have new homes being built where the runoff was being pumped into the street,
Or their sumps,
or their sumps.
right, so there would be a recharge system on site, and their roof runoff and their sumps would go into those recharge systems. And, you know, I know that this is Chip's big pet peeve, you know, his neighbor did an addition, there was soil that came from the foundation, that soil was spread across the site and created a situation for him, a drainage issue. That would not be allowed. because that would be a significant alteration of the grade from what it was to what it was after and there would be documentation of that. That's where it kind of falls apart right now, is the fact that you almost can't, you don't have the grading plan to go by. The grading plan is prepared, reviewed, and approved before anything goes in the ground. So you kind of have like a jumping off point. After it's done, and you're kind of guessing at stuff, like what was the topography before they did the addition, you know, you don't have a baseline to say, you changed the grade by a foot or 2 feet or whatever, because you don't have a baseline from where it was. I mean, yeah, you could probably go dig a hole and try to figure it out, but, you know, physically. But the reality of it is, a grading plan would be reproducible. And we frankly, not here, but in other places, we've actually gone back to the grading plan to prove that a builder did not achieve what the approved grading plan called for. That they significantly changed the grade even beyond what the grading plan allowed. So it gives the borough kind of a leg up on, at least on an enforcement basis, and then not like a gee whiz, how did that happen, sort of, you know, posture. And then, you know, some of the stuff in the remainder of this is kind of technical. The dry wells should be 2 feet above the groundwater table. It needs to be 2 feet because DEP requires that. That's in the stormwater regulations, the DEP manual.
That's gonna make it very difficult for some
In spots.
residents, right?
In spots they're going to be. But by the same token, there are methods for, I mean, look, you know, there's Rec Pond in Spring Lake, there's houses all around there, the groundwater table is real shallow, and, you know, we've had, you know, engineers find a way, there's, you know, like low, you know, there's recharge, strategies that can be done even where groundwater table is high. So, I mean, there may be spots where it's impossible, and maybe there needs to be a way to recognize that. I don't know, that might be something you need to try, like, see how it goes and see if you.
Would that be something that would fall under a planning board situation? They would have to go for a variance to that?
Well, right, so if this ends up in the zoning ordinance, then you need to get a variance from it if you can't do it. But again, that's maybe, is that an intended consequence or an unintended consequence of the ordinance? Like, if somebody's doing a fully conforming addition, but they can't achieve one or more of the criteria of the grading plan, and you're chasing them to the board on that basis, is that where you wanna be, or not necessarily? I mean, just, it's something, I'm kinda throwing it out there as something to think about. You know, you never wanna be the guy that, you know, I always think of it like, even at the planning board, you know, you have an applicant come in that's coming in for a variance on a fence. You can't, you know, I'm not gonna do a $1,000 review for something that's only gonna cost them $500, you know what I mean? Like, are you gonna chase into the board over something like that, or do you provide some out, built in there, where maybe some matter of grading in those really low-lying areas, could overcome the, let's say, or help mitigate so that it doesn't impact adjacent properties. And then the last thing was actually in the last item, the basement floor slabs. They also have to be 2 feet now above the groundwater table but that's actually by the stormwater regulations as well. It used to be 1 foot, they moved it to 2 feet. So, and I know that's a lot of stuff to kind of digest. Like I keep writing down notes here, I'm like rewriting this thing as I go.
Drew, you've been back and forth with Al. Do you have anything that you want to add?
I have some technical questions. You know, said and done, I understand the issue with trying to, there's a lot of houses out there that over the last decade or so, you know, this is an issue, right? That's why it's in front of us. And water management is a huge problem in Jersey, especially in this area. that being said, outside the approvals, the enforcement aspect of it. Right? So, and the technical, part of that. So, my question to you, is that something that the code enforcement would handle once they, what are your thoughts?
So, it's been, like, so my experience has been, I mean, the one thing that's a little bit different, I work here, I work in Spring Lake, I work in Brielle, I work in Wall Township. And all of those places, the zoning office has at least one engineer in it. So the zoning officer in Spring Lake is actually an engineer, the zoning officer in Brielle is actually an engineer. So they can actually review these plans and do it as part of their zoning permit. Not to say that, let's say, a zoning officer that's not an engineer can't review and approve it, but they, I think you'd want to have a confidence that that person knows what they're looking at, or would rely somehow on a professional, or you identify that maybe the municipal engineer looks at grading plans. And then the enforcement's probably easier, because the enforcement really probably starts with somebody who can read a grading plan. Like, a lot of times you can go out there and there's gonna be things that didn't change. The sidewalk didn't change, the neighbor's garage didn't change, like things that are nearby. You're gonna have a sense of whether the landform looks right or not. So, but you can put the onus back on the applicant to prove that they followed their own plan. Like, if they really deviate that much, it's really on them to, or you can put it on them, you can essentially, assert that they didn't achieve their plan, or they went beyond their plan, and they're not in compliance. That jeopardizes the zoning permit. So, it can get messy, but all code enforcement can get messy. I mean, that's just the way it is, but at least when you have the pre-existing condition, right now you don't have pre-existing conditions, unless they come before the planning board. We don't get surveys with topography on them, we just get surveys. Zoning office really only gets surveys that have the 4 square of the property, but not what the landform is. The grading plan's gonna give the landform, and that really kind of gives everybody a leg, and it provides a fair basis. And I don't mean to make it sound like it gives the borough a leg up, but it gives it more information to be able to do enforcement. Without the existing conditions, it's hard to do enforcement. So the grading plan will establish what the existing conditions are.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I know we have a lot more talking to do.
Mhm.
And you raised a couple more questions for myself. It's a work in progress, I think, Mayor. I think we're headed in the right direction.
I have a question, I have 2 questions, actually. So just so I understand, is this is an ordinance that you've, taken from somebody else and kind of marked up that you're proposing? It's not necessarily our ordinance or what you're proposing exactly word for word that we adopted, just
Correct.
here for the purposes of the discussion?
Notes, right.
Yeah, okay, just wanted to clarify that. And then
And
just,
that's been in place in Spring Lake for probably at least 15 years. And again,
That's what
it's
this one is,
Spring Lake
Spring Lake.
guys, but yes, this has been on their books and this is in their zoning ordinance. This is what I apply as the board engineer when applicants are before me, and it's what the zoning officer applies when he has applications that are not going before the board that he applies.
understood, okay, thanks. And then you mentioned, Mayor asked a question about sort of mitigators when it comes to building a new home and what would be allowed and what wouldn't be allowed. And this might be a big question, and there might not be a simple answer to this, but what are the cost differences for someone putting in what we would want them to put in versus what's allowed now, if you will?
Right now, there's nothing really required. I mean, unless they came before the board and there's a condition that the board put on it, let's say it's a brand new house. Right now, they can kind of mess around with the grade to at least probably an extent before people start screaming. And then they could have no drainage, no leaders or gutters, or they could have leaders and gutters down the splash blocks that are 3 feet from the side lot line. And depending where you are in town, that could be a big deal. If your lot runs front to back, or I'm sorry, back to front, okay, most of the drainage is probably going out toward the street anyway. But if it's on Parkway, it's just going from one lot to the next, to the next, to the next. So, you know, that water at the back of the house is never gonna get out to the street, it's gonna go to the neighbor's yard. But, what we're proposing here, it's a new house, all of those downspouts would go into, a dry well system. Provided it's not so low on the hill that the groundwater table is so high that you can't do it, but if you're midway up, or near the top, up close to 18th Avenue, you're gonna put in dry well systems that are gonna catch all this stuff, and you're gonna grade the lot such that you minimize impacts to the neighbor's properties, even after you did the mitigation. So, there's a way to make those things, that's where you're probably gonna get your most dramatic effect, is gonna be on new homes. People that come in for fully conforming houses, don't come before the board, that, you know, they knock down a bungalow and they put up some big monster 2.5 story house, but you're gonna get mitigation of all the stormwater that comes from at least the building.
Right, so I think that sounds great. But my question is, what's the price of something like that?
Like a dry well, are you asking what a?
Yeah, like
dry
what you're
well is?
proposing,
installation?
what's the difference in what?
Depends on what
what's
you-
the homeowner looking at?
Depends on what, you know, if, you know, concrete tanks cost money, you probably, you know, you probably could spend like a couple $1,000 on, having a tank installed with the stone and some piping and, you know, a concrete vault, but there's other ways to do it. You can do it with stone, filter fabric, and pipe, perforated pipe. Actually, that, we see that quite a bit in, when we do with the board, when we require those things, you know, that we have, that you'll see like a, you know, it's almost like a burrito. You have the filter fabric, it's below the grade by 6 inches to a foot. And then it's a stone, a pipe wrapped in stone, wrapped in filter fabric. And yeah, you know, you get so much volume per linear foot of that. You know, you put in a 30, 40, 50 feet of that. And, you know, maybe with a pop-up emitter out by the street so that if it does overflow, it overflows to the street, not to your neighbor's yard. I mean, that's, we've approved a couple of them on planning board applications. It's not really high-tech. There are some things that are high-tech, but.
But you could spend like just a few $1,000s, you're saying it could be.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could spend a lot more too.
Right, but, I mean, just, I don't know, like
No.
I said, this might not have an easy answer, but I
And,
just wanted to get an
and
idea.
it's something that some people can install themselves. It's not like you necessarily have to have a contractor to do it. I mean, okay, digging a trench 30 or 40 feet long is backbreaking work, but it's, you know, it's not exotic, it's not.
And I think the simple answer is by requiring something, someone building a home will have to pay more than they're paying right now.
Yep,
To put something extra in there.
yes,
Sure.
yeah.
And to do the plan
Plus
and
the
to,
grading plan.
you know, all those things, you know, it's gonna add up. You know, this ordinance will have people incur more costs in doing, you know, but by the same token, it helps mitigate, you know, all the code enforcement that you have to do, rainstorm after rainstorm after rainstorm. You know, that it just, it gets tiring. I mean, honestly, the last month or 6 weeks of rain, and then that rain earlier back in like September, the end of September, where it rained for like a week. I felt like that's all we did all the time was chase around drainage problem, this drainage problem. I mean, I was on the road like half a week, you know, just, you know, not here, elsewhere, but, you know, it gets tiring.
I don't know, Wally, not being a contractor or anything, but if you're, it could run an awful lot of money to the neighbors if all of a sudden you have to figure out how to get water out of your basement because 2 or 3 people around you, when you're trying to solve that problem after the house is built, especially when it's not, wasn't really your problem that caused it. I would think that could be very expensive.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure.
I had one.
I have no issues. I have no questions, I know what's going on.
Anything?
If I could just make one suggestion, it wouldn't come under this ordinance. You know, earlier I mentioned what, one of the things we're seeing in town is people are trying to build like compounds on their lots. Right now, you're allowed to put a 10 by 10 foot shed in, you know, you can lawnmower in and whatnot. Where maybe one of the things that we could tighten that ordinance up a little bit so that you're building a shed like that, it's supposed to be a utility shed, but you can't have plumbing and sewage, and you can't run water and sewage to it. I mean, maybe running electric's fine, you need a light in it, you need a plug to start your snow blower, you know. But it might be a good idea to think about that a little bit too, you know, what we're strictly limiting what that shed's gonna be used for. And the other is, you know, and Al's talked about this before, along the same lines of people trying to, I think, kind of overdevelop in many cases the property. Again, we're not lots the size of Spring Lake and Brielle. You know, but maybe we really do start to need to define things like what a pergola is, you know, and a gazebo, and a cabana, and a pavilion, you know.
We have the definitions.
Yeah.
You know, it's something we kind of trip over, you know, both in the review, and I'm sure if John Rowe were here, he'd say the same thing. You know, he sees it every day. I only see it a couple times a month, but he sees it every day. So even if you just define them,
Does Brielle or Spring Lake have something like that?
Spring Lake has better definitions than Brielle does. I'd say they've kind of kept up with, and part of that's been application driven. We've had applications, the zoning office didn't know what to do with a request, it came before the board. We recognized that there was some level of a hybrid or something we didn't define. And, you know, you see a couple of them and you're like, you know what, we thought we should define that and even maybe put a criteria on it. It can't be more than 100 square feet, 200 square feet. It has to be attached to a garage. Like, you come up with these criteria so that, you know, it helps, you know, well, it makes it fair for everybody. And, you know, the town and the neighbors don't get taken advantage of because it's not defined.
Can we get copies of, Drew or Amy, can we get copies of other towns regarding that, and we can look at it?
I can look into it. Just so the council knows, this is multiple, what we have in front of you is multiple
Yeah.
areas, right? So it's Brielle and Spring Lake, and I glanced at a few other ones, but I think Spring Lake had, most of their items seem to be the best.
Yeah, they've, Spring Lake really stays on top of the definitions, and actually it's a kind of a sore point, they don't even involve me. They have their own engineer, their zoning officer, the town engineer, the town planner does this, and I kind of get to look at it at the end of the day. I'm like, well, that's funny, I get to help enforce it, but but they've done a really pretty good job there with, you know, defining things and, you know, kind of at least staying with trends, when it comes to like impervious coverage and, you know, there's new materials out there and, you know, they're paying attention to what's going on out there, which is good.
Anything else from the council before we open it up? Okay, I'll come back after we open up for the council. Can you just put up that mic so we can have someone from, thank you. Time, anyone from the public who would like to make comments on our workshop items or the discussion we had can do so now. You can come to the mic. We just need your name and address and any comments or questions you may have.
Jim Buchanan, 528 North Boulevard. So my question is, I understand where you're coming from. Everything that you're saying makes sense. But I have an issue of being the lowest property in this area, and the water has infiltrated my wall, my yard, and the amount of water that I'm getting is tremendous. I have videos, I have over 100 videos, multiple occasions. So my question is, the problem that is very big. It's not just one house, two houses. How do we, and the water has etched its way. So even in a drizzle, I'm getting flooded. So how do we rectify those types of situations where the stormwater is actually creating damage to another property? I know that you're in the pre-building stages, but post-building, where is there any remedy there?
So I think that was part of the questions, part of the discussion we had there was how do we really enforce this on existing structures, right, existing property?
Right, I didn't hear any of that.
Right, is there, I mean, it was a question, I know
Yes,
it was a
I
legal
get it.
question.
That's my big question.
But it's not your question?
No, that's my big question.
Yeah, and that would be my question too. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that, that's a possibility.
Well, just off the top of my head,
You're on. Should be.
oh, okay, you were.
There you go.
You know, I'd have to give it some thought and think about this, but from the top of my head, I think that's sort of the whole point of why the council is considering this ordinance, because right now, there's nothing to enforce, right? And if you're talking about, if you could identify, it might be a private action between you and a neighbor if a neighbor's property is flooding yours. But from the borough standpoint, to me, it doesn't seem like there's any enforcement mechanism in place that I can think of off the top of my head to address existing conditions, which it sounds like they've been getting worse over time as we've been, more and more flooding has been occurring.
Yes, so I would add to that the plans that I have researched for the land behind me had specific qualifiers. And I'm not sure those qualifying actions were met.
So there's recent development that you're talking about.
So I went back as far as Ronald Glynn's final plat. And the information that I had, you have the information here, you could look at it. I'm not sure that those plans were followed. So what you were saying about someone comes in and they do the grading and then they leave, and then all of a sudden that grading isn't what it was supposed to be. So after the fact, how does that enter the equation?
So I'll address that, and I'll ask Drew to help me address that, because we're in the middle of looking at the enforcement on that. And Drew, can you just give us an update where we are with that? We're looking at the wells and we're trying to figure out how many wells there are, correct?
Right, so several properties there do have wells. To determine how many wells and the size of those wells, that's what we're trying to determine. Now, some of those houses weren't required, I can't find any documentations, but in particular, the house is right behind you, right? So
Right.
they actually go into the ground, but there's no documentation that says what size wells or, and what wells there are. Now, with the problem that we're having too is the water table, right? So, even those wells do fill up, and I think Mr. Hill explained it, what do you do to once those wells fill up, and they fill up quickly with this amount of rain that we have, where does that water go from there? In your area, a lot of the property slope right to you, right?
Right to me.
And that's not something that is easily fixed. We can't slope it to the street. For them to slope it to the street, they would actually go on somebody else's property to do that, as we discussed. So running pipes through other people's properties, there's no easement there for the town. So I'm still working into that. There's a lot of questions, and I've been working with Al on that. So I don't have a solid answer for you. There's houses that have been there quite long, right?
Yes, listen, I understand that, but the activity that is going on behind me is creating more and more damage. So when I first moved in, I thought it was just a leaky, the walls in my crawl space had holes in them, and I went around and I patched them up. And then the water came in over there, and then I patched up over there, and then over there, and then I patched up over there. So then I started to really think about like what was going on. Now I landscaped my property so that the water would flow away from the house and be absorbed into the soil. That wasn't working. And then one day, my whole yard was flooded in 2018. So that showed me that it was coming from behind. So what I'm saying is this problem is not just since I moved in. This has been going on for a long time, and I wonder, were there any considerations of the slope? Did the town allow these things to happen without knowing that that was the lowest point on that block? It's all sloping to me. And I do think, somebody mentioned, you know, it should be the good neighbor clause, where do no harm, I'm being harmed, and it's bad. It's much worse than you think. My yard is ruined. It used to be a beautiful little place where I could go and hide and just be at peace. It's a nightmare. And I don't know what to do, and I know, I could tell you what the problems are in detail. I could show you videos. But I can't solve the problem myself. I think it's a group effort. And that's where I come to you and say, can you help me? And this is like a good neighbor thing. I mentioned that perhaps we could get people to gather and really show what's going on, and maybe they can help in a neighborly way. I don't want to sue anybody. I don't want to do that. But I am experiencing pure hell. Every time it rains, I'm out there sucking water out of my crawl and trying to get it out of my yard. It's unbelievable. I have videos. If you don't think I'm not struggling, then I'll send you all the videos. If this was happening to your house, you'd be as mad as me. So I don't know what to say. I think that you guys have to get involved in some way. And I have solutions. I believe I wrote them down.
So I'm going to stop you right there. If you want to come back at the public session during the meeting with those solutions and those comments, you can do so.
When is
Right
that?
now, it's right after, once we do our regular meeting.
Oh, okay.
So right now, we're talking about this ordinance.
I yield back.
All right, awesome, thank you. Anyone else having comments or questions or discussion on this ordinance, on this discussion in this, not an ordinance, it's the discussion in this workshop? Bless you. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to close. Thank you,
Second.
thank you. All in favor? I don't even think we needed to really make a motion.
There you go.
Okay, I want to thank you to our guests tonight. I appreciate your expertise. I think you explained it very well. I think a couple of the big questions that we have to talk about as a council is, number one, how do we as the governing body help our residents who are experiencing this issue currently, and not just what we can do to help them in the future with new buildings. And I know that is a question that you are mulling over, Al, and I know that's something that we're going to discuss in the future as well. Additionally, if we were going to move forward with this ordinance, we would definitely have to question the number in D, the size of additions, square footage of additions. I agree that 750 square feet is probably very large for Lake Como, but that is something that we could talk about. And additionally, what the minimum cubic feet of any type of recharge system would be. That would equate to whatever that square footage is. I think it's very important, though, that the council does understand that this would specifically direct new building in our town that they would have one way and one way only of dealing with their wastewater, with their stormwater management. I think it's a good, I think it's a good direction. I think it's a good recommendation for an ordinance. I think it's very important that you understand, though, that that's what the ordinance would read. That if somebody's gonna build a house, this is how you deal with stormwater management, and that's it. And if you need to do something else, you would have to go in front of a zoning board and look at different variants. So as you move forward. Any final comments or questions before we move on? Okay. At this time, I will end our workshop meeting. You're gonna bring those notes back to somebody? Okay, thanks. Thank you all very much for coming. If you are leaving after the workshop meeting, at this time, I will call the regular meeting of the mayor and council to order. Please rise for a salute to the flag and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law, please.
Adoption of the resolution of the mayor and council on the second day of January 2024, in which resolution the time and place of agenda and regular meetings commencing with January 2nd were set forth. Notice of same is delivered to the Asbury Park Press, the co-star and step into, and a copy of the notice was posted on the borough website and on the bulletin board in Borough Hall. All meetings are open to the public.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Liddy?
Here.
Stahl? Here. O'Connor?
Here.
Councilman Vinci?
Here.
Councilwoman Salgado? Here.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes for approval tonight. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the December 19th regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 2nd reorganization meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have no communications. We will start with our reports. We'll have reports of committees, starting with Councilwoman Albala Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as my committees, all matters are in order, but I did want to take a moment just to say a big thank you to the Belmar Police Department, to the Fire Department, and First Aid for their quick action the other day. As someone who lives right there and was able to be witness to a lot of what happened, they really did an amazing job. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for protecting what they could protect, for helping the neighbors surrounding them, and also for helping the people who were in there. So thank you so much. Please pass that along. Other than that, all matters in order.
Thank you. Folks, if you don't mind, folks, if you can, we're gonna have, if you can take the discussion, thanks, appreciate it. Councilman Ventris.
Thank you, Mayor. The Environmental Commission is meeting this Thursday night at 6:30 here. It's our, I think, every other monthly meeting. And right now, the Williamsburg High School for Architecture and Design is working with the Environmental Commission to help make a proposal for the Main Street Arboretum of trees. Now, they actually helped out with the lake. They were very helpful there. We're looking to see how they can help out the commission on that project also. Otherwise, all matters are in order.
Amy, do you know offhand, I'm putting you on the spot here, I'm sorry, do you know offhand if we have money in the tree fund?
Do you know?
Okay, all right, we'll figure that out too, because that might help as far
Yeah.
as the Arboretum is concerned. I think the Arboretum's is a great idea. It's something that I know that the Environmental Commission has been working on for many years. I think it'll be a nice addition to our Main Street. Councilman D'Antuono.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to thank the DPW for their hard work today, keeping the streets clean, getting out there at 4 a.m. during this first bit of winter weather we experienced today. So they did a good job getting out there bright and early and keeping things as cleaned up as possible. And looks like there could be a little bit more on the horizon for later this week, but hopefully that's ends up not being too bad. But yeah, so appreciate their hard work today. Other than that, all matters are in order.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Scull.
Thank you, Mayor. All matters are in order.
Thank you. Council President Liddy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to Heather's comment, I'll be going to the Belmar dinner, private dinner on Saturday, and I'll make our comments known to them, how thankful they are, we are for them, doing what the good job they did. And I'll bring that up at the dinner. Chief, you have anything you want to report on?
No.
Other than that, matters in order.
Thank you. I will echo my, my colleagues' thanks to the fire department, first aid, and the police department. For those of you that don't know, we had an unfortunate incident on Wildwood Place yesterday morning, wow, it was yesterday, where the police received a phone call about 6:05 that there was a fire, a structure fire on Wildwood Place. Our fire department did respond. Unfortunately, the house was a loss, but they did an excellent job saving the adjacent structures, and the loss was limited. There was no loss of human life. There was some minor injuries to the occupants of the house and to one fireman, and they were treated, and I believe they were released from Jersey Shore Medical Center. So thank you for everyone who responded to that. And it's not just our first responders, but it is our neighbors and our citizens that see these and call them in, and anybody that did anything for that, thank you very much. Additionally, thank you to our DPW and our office workers here for opening today and getting out at 4 o'clock this morning to plow and to salt and to sand, and they will be keeping up those efforts throughout the night and tomorrow as we get a dip in the temperature. This Sunday is the 20th. It is Coffee with the Mayor. First Coffee with the Mayor for the year. If it's not on the website and the board, we will put it on. There we go. Saturday, what did I say? Saturday, sorry, it's Saturday. It is at 9 o'clock, I'm sorry, it is at 9 o'clock, 9 to 10:30 on Saturday. Other than that, all matters are in order. We have one item under new business for, oh, we gotta open up to public comments, right? Okay. I'll take a motion to open for public comments on new business and consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone wishing to speak to items that are listed under the consent agenda or new business only may do so, may come up and do that now if you wish. Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have one special events permit underneath, under new business. We have the Jersey Shore 5K. Do we have a representative for this special events permit with us? Please come to the mic and give us your name and address, please.
Hi, Jim Giordino from 20 Sherman Avenue, West Long Branch.
Hey, Jim, how are you?
Good, good.
I believe you've been here before.
I have.
Correct? Yes. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your permit request.
It's a 5K run. I believe it's running through Belmar, Lake Como, and Spring Lake. It's a 5K, both combination run and walk.
And this is, have you received permission from the other towns yet?
I believe that we have, but I don't have the exact answer for that.
It
15.
is on the agenda for Belmar next week.
Just so you know, you would have to get permission from Spring Lake as well.
Absolutely.
And this is a run walk that you've done with us in the past, correct?
Correct.
And the time of the event is 8:30,
Mm-hmm.
and the run will begin by 9 a.m.?
Yes.
What's the date? May 4th?
May 4th.
Any questions from the council? Chief, any comments?
The only comment I have, and I think we've already discussed it, or Belmar has discussed it with you, when you're going around the lake on the Spring Lake side, you have to run on the path around the lake.
Yep.
You're no longer shutting down the roads in Spring Lake.
I think we did that last year as well. Yep.
So the only question I have, and I think we've dealt with this situation with this group before, is that there's a lot of walkers, I believe, correct?
Yes.
And at a certain point, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, we do move walkers to the sidewalk at a certain point?
Yes, so we'll move them once they come around the lake and onto Main Street, once the runners are already through, and if there's still walkers, we'll move them to the sidewalks.
Yeah, I believe you did that last year as well, yep.
Okay. That worked out well?
Yeah.
And that just helps us open up the streets
Oh, absolutely.
quicker.
The insurance certificate expires on the 16th of November.
I can't speak to the insurance, I was just asked to be a representative. If you have questions, I can go back with, and trying to get some answers for you.
Well, you're definitely gonna need a new certificate of insurance.
Yeah, I'll email, I think it was Joe, right?
Yes, Joe.
Yeah, before, and I'll get one before the event.
So just let Joe know that if the council does approve this, that it will come with the caveat that insurance comes, and Amy will let us know if it doesn't.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we approve it with the caveat that the new insurance certificate be submitted.
Second.
Second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Scout?
Yes.
Antoine?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Amy will expect the insurance certificate, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
All right, we have Resolution 2024-31 offered by Council President Whitty.
So for resolution 24-31, a resolution of the mayor and council of the borough of Lake Como providing for the making of a temporary appropriation. This is creating a temporary budget until the new budget is passed. It can't exceed 26.25% of the 2023 budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Scout?
Yes.
Antoine?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Thank you, the resolution passes. Resolution 2024-32 offered by Councilman D'Antuono.
Thank you, Mayor. So offered resolution 2024-32 is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for a municipal auditor. Whereas Robert Aliwa, CPA, RMA of Aliwa and Company CPA, is hereby appointed municipal auditor effective April 1st, 2024, for a one-year term through March 31st, 2025. Now, therefore, be resolved that the mayor and council of the Borough of Lake Como hereby authorizes the borough clerk to enter into a contract with Robert Aliwa of Aliwa and Company CPA as described here.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Scout?
Yes.
Antoine?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Thank you. I have Resolution 2024-33 offered by Councilwoman Scull.
Thank you, Mayor. Offering Resolution 2024-33, resolution appointing Office of Emergency Management Coordinator. Whereas at the recommendation of the Mayor, the Borough Council wishes to appoint an Office of Emergency Management Coordinator as follows: Robert DeMartin. The above person shall serve in their respective role for a term commencing January 16, 2024 and expiring December 31st, 2026.
Thank you. And just for the record, this is replacing our OEM coordinator, Tucker Brindle, resigned. He got a full-time job. Mr. DeMartin has been on public safety teams. He is the head of Belmar EMS, and I have the utmost confidence in his ability to be the OEM coordinator. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Scout?
Yes.
Antoine?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes. We have Resolution 2024-34 offered by Council President Whitty.
So of resolution 2024-34, amending the appointment of the local emergency planning committee. And this is adding Robert DeMartin to that committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Scout?
Yes.
Antoine?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution passes. Resolution 2024-35 offered by Councilman Ventris from memory.
Sum it up.
So for resolution 2024-35, resolution of the Borough of Lake Como Council Executive Sessions, whereas the Borough Council and the Borough of Lake Como must discuss matters which are not appropriate for discussion in a public meeting, and whereas these subjects are within exceptions to the Open Public Meetings Act and are permitted to be discussed in closed session pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12B, whereas the Borough Council intends to discuss matters covered by the attorney-client privilege, and it is anticipated that the closed session will be up to 30 minutes long.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Skull?
Yes.
Antoino?
Yes.
Ventries?
Yes.
Carvalho?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes. Resolution number 2024-36, offered by Councilman Danzler.
Thank you, Mayor. Sole offered resolution number 2024-36. This is a resolution of the Borough of Lake Como setting forth the salaries of certain Borough of Lake Como employees in accordance with the salary ranges established in Ordinance 2022-979. This is for calendar year 2024 for employees, and the resolution outlines the positions and base salaries for salaried positions, as well as the hourly rates for hourly positions.
Resolution, do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Skull?
Yes.
Antoino?
Yes.
Ventries?
Yes.
Carvalho?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes. Resolution 2024-37, offered by Councilwoman Scully.
Thank you, Mayor. So offered resolution 2024-37. Be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Lake Como that the proper officers be directed and authorized to make payment from the following accounts. The current account, 2023, for the attached bill list, $11,437.32. The water and sewer account, 2023, $10,662.19. The general capital account, $144. The ACH wire payments, current account is $33,577.38. And the water sewer is $5,364.03, for a 2023 total of $62,184.92. Then there's the current account 2024, per attached bill list, $57,893. Water sewer account 2024, $173,684.03. And the capital outlay account 2024, $30,920.37, for a 2024 total of $262,497.40.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Skull?
Yes.
Antoino?
Yes.
Ventries?
Yes.
Carvalho?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes. Resolution 2024-38, also offered by Councilwoman Scully.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 2024-38, offering, be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Lake Como that the proper officers be directed and authorized to make payment from the following account. Current account, New Jersey Natural Gas Company, $663.38.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Skull?
Yes.
Antoino?
Abstain?
Ventries?
Yes.
Carvalho?
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes. We have resolution 2024-39, offered by Councilwoman Alvala Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor. So offered resolution 2024-39, which is a resolution authorizing the borough clerk and/or borough administrator to solicit proposals for Behrman Park playground improvements under the Community Development Block Grant. We were awarded $177,692 under that Community Development Block Grant for the purpose of these improvements. This would be the first phase of improvements set to be for this installation of this playground, and this will require us to solicit bids for proposal from qualified contractors. And be it resolved that this would, the borough clerk and/or the borough administrator, with the guidance of the borough engineer, will report back to the mayor and council at the February 6, 2024 meeting with their recommendations for award of the contract for the project.
We'll have the bids back that quick? No? Nice. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Skull? Yes. Antoino?
Yes.
Ventries?
Yes.
Carvalho?
Yes.
And we also have an addition, so we have resolution 2024-40, offered by Council President Whitty.
So offer resolution 2024-40. This is a resolution authorizing the transfer of money from certain accounts to other accounts in the amount of $84,269.39. This is for the budget of 2023. Also in the resolution, there is transferring from the water account to a social security account of $500.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitty?
Yes.
Skull?
Yes.
Capano?
Yes.
Ventries?
Yes.
Abalado?
Yes.
Thank you. Before we go into executive session, I will take a motion to open for public comments, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone wishing to speak on comments or questions for anything, please come to the mic. And name and address once again, please.
Tim Buchanan, 528 North Boulevard. So I was going to read this at Milton's planning board meeting. I looked where he was going to put his addition, and it either was going to go in behind him, which there's houses like right there, or it was going to come downhill right into my yard. So I'm just going to read it. So I've been here since 2014. From 2015 to 2017, I was plugging leaks in my crawl space. Councilwoman Skull, I have spent about $10,000 so far, and it's getting worse, just because I know you were worried about money. In 2018, that's when the problem revealed itself. I observed stormwater runoff infiltrating the backyard and began stage 2 of my flooding plan to address these issues. I know where the water is coming from. I have a video, August 13th, 2018. The flooding became more of a serious issue after 13 Ripley Lane, I think that was Gary's house, was constructed. I just want you to see.
Jim,
I can't do this?
Not right now. I want you to continue.
All right, I'll hold this up.
I want you to continue with your.
If you can see, all right, it's like a waterfall. This is going in my basement. The flooding became more serious when that house was built. My patio is ruined, my patio furniture is ruined, my plants are dead. The garden that I have is not working out very well. The trees, landscaper, my pavers, the retaining wall is collapsing. My crawl space has mold. I have cuts on my head from banging my head on the ceiling of the crawl, and the house's foundation is at stake. Is it still playing? Now, I can't fix this problem. It's unfixable. I have pumps. They're going all the time. Still the water's coming. I can't fix this problem on my own. I mean, I could sue everybody, but I don't want to do that. That's not very neighborly. I've studied the stormwater flow. I've studied the communications between the Lake Como Planning Board and the Ronald Glenn major subdivision, as well as other documents concerning this issue from July 15, 2004 to May 31st, 2016. I have some issues concerning what was proposed in the major subdivision documents and then what was actually done. I have brought this issue to your attention. Mr. Hussman came out, gave me some advice. I took him up on it, and it's not working. I mean, it's working because my basement's not getting flooded as much, but it's not working. And as I said before, this issue is not a problem that I can solve on my own. It's going to require that the residents that live behind me, whose construction has knowingly or unknowingly led to the filtering of stormwater onto my property to get involved. I have to get them involved. I'm trying, but I think it would be nice if you guys could help out. I don't know how you can help out, but any suggestions, I'll take. So I was going to say I couldn't agree to any of the variances from that house because I know the water is just going. I'm going to get more. It's going to get worse. So some of the solutions, in my opinion, would be shallow dry wells for underground stormwater facilities, confirmed downstream stormwater piping connections. Homes on Ripley Lane should be equipped with gutter guards to reduce leaves from entering the stormwater drainage system. And I think one of the big problems is the easement labeled Ripley Lane be paved to control that water flow. The road, just push anything from like over there to there, right to my house, the road just sends it all. I don't know what to do. It's like my new hobby, and it's not fun. I need your help. That's all I have. I have videos.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan.
If you want me to email you some, I'll send you some.
You
videos.
sent it to me, I've seen.
Yeah, they're worse now.
Yeah.
What I sent you, that was nothing.
I believe you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
You as well. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, take a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we are going to go into executive session. We are going to use this chamber. We will come back. I do not think we will have anything to offer when we come back, and we will just come back for adjournment. So, thank you all very much. Have a great night. Drive safe. Be careful.